Hi, I'm Matthew Roars, and this is Scaling What Matters. Human flourishing depends on more than good intentions. It depends on work, capital, and leadership that create real opportunity. At Sinapis, we've spent 15 years serving entrepreneurs exclusively in frontier markets, at the intersection of faith, business, and job creation. This podcast brings together voices shaping that ecosystem, from entrepreneurs and investors to pastors and public leaders. Thanks so much for joining us, and let's jump in. Today, a little bit out of the ordinary, I am joined by my colleague, Martin Kibisu, who leads acceleration and advisory at Sinapis. Welcome, Martin.
Thank you very much, Matthew, for having me.
So this is fun, having this kind of conversation in this setting. So as we begin, why don't you just describe what you do at Sinapis? What does Sinapis do? If I use this phrase, acceleration and advisory, what does that mean? What do you do?
So first, I'm super excited that I'm having this conversation with you, so I can say whatever I want because it's a podcast, and I'm having a conversation with my boss. So this is interesting. But Sinapis is generally an entrepreneur support organization, and what that means is we walk the journey with entrepreneurs. We work with idea stage entrepreneurs, and we work with our early stage entrepreneurs and growth stage entrepreneurs, and we walk their entrepreneurial journey with them for as long as they allow us. So we don't just run a program and then we're done with them and we tell them bye-bye, but we walk the journey with them, whether it's them seeking to raise funds, whether they're seeking support in terms of discipleship, whether they're seeking support in terms of their own wellness, whether they're seeking to build a team. We walk the journey with them in program and even post-program.
So that's interesting. So your work in acceleration focuses on growth stage entrepreneurs.
Yeah.
For those that maybe aren't familiar with that, what does that mean?
So what that means, when we talk of growth stage entrepreneurs, we're talking of founders who probably have, to break it down, they have a leadership team of at least a co-founder and two other people. And then they also have employees that are working for them. They're making a revenue of about $250,000, which translates to about 30 million, loosely 30 million Kenya shillings. So those are the founders we refer to as growth stage, because different organizations refer to different stages of business different, but that's our definition of growth stage founders.
Yeah, and can you tell a story? You're pouring blood, sweat, and tears.
Yeah.
You're pouring your life into these founders. Can you tell a story of one of the companies that you've worked with to help people understand, why does this matter? Why is this important?
Do I just have to tell about one?
You can tell multiple.
Okay, fine. So there's a lady we worked with, and we still work with them because as Sinapis, even post-program, we still journey with our founders. And she is in the agricultural value addition space. To be specific, she does chilies. And I want to zero in on this lady because I want to talk about her impact, not just in her direct employees, but in the value chain that she works in. So she works with smallholder farmers, and these smallholder farmers would probably have a maximum of 2 acres, 1 acre, or half an acre, and she helps them to be able to grow chilies the right way so that these chilies can then be taken to her factory and she can process them. One of the farmers she worked with she works with currently earns around $200 a month. That might not seem like a lot of money, but when we had a conversation with this farmer, he told us that he showed us, he actually has evidence, the house he's been able to build out of the $200 she earns a month, from a mud house to a brick house with electricity. Had his daughter, who had just graduated from university, was there. And he was telling us that because of that, he's been able to see his daughter through primary school, high school, and university. And he had 4 other kids who he was seeing through school because of that. Now, if that is not impact, think about this girl whose father probably didn't go to school, But because of this entrepreneur who's created this opportunity and capacity built, this girl has a chance at a much better future than the dad ever did, because she went to campus. The dad didn't go to campus. And so that's one story. And this same lady noticed that in her neighborhood, there's so many women. These women normally do menial jobs. So, for example, they sit around waiting to be called to do housekeeping and stuff like that. And so it depends. You might go there and sit the whole day and not get a job at all. So she spoke with these women. The other aspect of her business is she still works with smallholder farmers, but she adds value to vegetables, so indigenous vegetables. She dehydrates them without them losing the nutrients and packages them for both the local and the export markets. So she organized these women into groups, and when they are not able to get the domestic chores that they do, then they're able to come to her sorting warehouse, and they are paid per kilogram of how much they've sorted. And they've been organized into groups where they save together and they learn different skills and they keep each other accountable. And that has all of a sudden ensured that this woman will day on day earn her keep. So that's just a story of one entrepreneur. And her impact is massive because she works across the western region of Kenya. So she works with probably over 1,000 farmers, and her impact is massive. That's just a story of one farmer. Multiply that times, say, 1,000.
So for that first farmer,
Yeah.
he's growing chilies. He's learning how to do that more effectively. Yeah. What is it about sourcing to this entrepreneur that you were talking about that leads to that income change? Like, how does that work?
So, one, this entrepreneur works with the farmers the way we work with our founders. So the first thing she does is she's worked with a local university to produce a resilient seeds that will do well in that region. And so she provides these farmers with seeds. She also provides them with education of how to grow, to harvest and dry the chilies to avoid post-harvest losses. And then she absorbs all the chilies that these farmers grow. So this farmer practically has a guaranteed market. He's not gonna, chilies are not like vegetables that you could probably say if you didn't sell them, if they're not absorbed by this factory, you can give them to your cows, or you can give them, like,
cows don't eat chilies.
They don't eat chilies. So they have to be absorbed somewhere. So she actually creates a guaranteed market for the farmers she works with, which is really transformative. And that's what transforms the income of that farmer. Now, all of a sudden, your 1 acre piece of land that was just, probably you're using a quarter of it for subsistence farming and the rest is lying fallow. Now it can be able to earn you a sustainable and consistent income month on month. Yeah.
So maybe to dig in on that a little bit more with this entrepreneur.
Yeah.
What were you doing to help her? What does that look like? Help us understand what's a week look like for you in working with founders like this.
What a week looks like is a roller coaster on a lighter note, from laughing with the founders to crying with them to getting angry at them to offering counseling, offering therapy, offering coaching. But to structure it more formally, we take them through an accelerator program that is designed for entrepreneurs by entrepreneurs. Every single person who, from the original team that designed the program to the team that delivers the program, are people who are entrepreneurs themselves or have engaged heavily with entrepreneurs. So it's not textbook theory based.
Why does that matter?
It matters because for you to be able to support and help an entrepreneur scale, especially at that stage, the stage that we look for that are at scaling, for you to be able to help them unlock the challenges that cause them to plateau, you need to be able to understand what entrepreneurship really means. You need to be able to understand the ecosystem. You need to be able to understand the frontier market, not from a corporate or government kind of company space, but from the lenses of an entrepreneur. And for you to do that, you need to have been in the trenches of entrepreneurship. it will help you empathize with them, and it will help you unlock some of the things that are hindering them from growth, because you've been where they are, you understand what they're going through, and you can be able to offer practical, relevant solutions. And that's first. Secondly, you also earn the credibility of the founders, because some of these founders know when you're giving them hogwash. I mean, if you read something out of a textbook and you're in class trying to convince them about it, they'll ask you one question and be like, you can't help my life. But if you are giving them real life experiences and examples, now they're able to listen to you, because they feel like, oh wow, this person is talking from experience, not from YouTube, and I respect YouTube, not from a book they read somewhere. So that's why that's really, really critical.
So where did that experience come from in your life? How do you find yourself here today?
How did I find myself here today is an interesting story. So first and foremost, my own background, my biggest influences in my life are both my grandparents, specifically my grandfathers. And because both of them were trailblazers in their sector. So I'll pick one because the stories can go forever. My granddad from my father's side of the family never went to school, but he was an entrepreneur. And the amount of work he did, from coming from being an orphan who didn't go to school, working with missionaries, being a porter, to being a chef, to setting his first business, which was a shop that sells building equipment, to moving on to running a farm, and eventually buying over 600 acres of land from white settlers who are moving a proper farm, and providing, supplying for a very big region in terms of supplying. He had milk, he had dairy, he had sheep, he had vegetables, maize, pyrethrum. And so he had an entire farm, and he was supplying a very big region. So if you look at his life, and then he passes on, and then it all goes up into flames, because the people who were left behind were not able to manage this, or steward and manage the resources as effectively or efficiently as they should have.
Did you witness that?
I was too young to witness it, but I saw the residues of it, and it ended up not as he had envisioned, because his envisioning was to set up a limited company and all his kids would be shareholders. That inspired me, and I was like, if we could have founders building businesses that would outlive them, the impact of those businesses would be immense, because he had the farm, and he used to supply water in the neighborhood, because he had a borehole and he had a pump, and he would supply electricity, and would supply milk, and and so the impact and the jobs that were created by his entrepreneurial initiatives made me realize that if we are going to change the narrative of joblessness and poverty, it's not going to be the government per se. The government is helpful because of making policies, but the people who will actually make a difference and shift the dial are entrepreneurs by choice.
When did you first realize that? Do you remember a time where that became a clear thought in your mind?
I remember a time. I was 21 years old, and one of my aunties, who I'm very close to, my father's sister, told me the story. Because I asked her, well, I see the farm is still there because guys have divided it and all those things, but it's not what it used to be. And when she told me the story and the impact of that story on them and on the people around and all that, I think that was my first awakening. I was like, oh, wow. So entrepreneurship really has a lot of impact. And I also worked for a while for Kenya Airways, which is the biggest airline in Kenya and one of the biggest airlines in Africa. And beyond just my work experience there, one of the things that was really powerful for me to see was the opportunity for entrepreneurship that Kenya Airways afforded Africa. What do I mean by that? We would get, for example, traders from Nigeria, Lagos, who would go to China to buy what in different businesses to buy stuff to come back to Lagos and sell. We would get guys in the horticultural space who would export their products to Europe and to the US and to different parts of the world. And just the massive movement of product and entrepreneurship through the airline was also the other thing that made me realize, oh wow, this can truly transform economies and change lives. Yeah. And I also was just entertaining a thought that what if we had a Kenyan founder starting a business and the business becomes as big as, say, Microsoft, and I believe it's possible. And I think that's my inspiration. That's what inspires me.
So can you tell us a little bit more about what were you doing at Kenya Airways?
So basically, I'll summarize my journey. I was in KQ for 15, Kenya Airways, which is called KQ, for 15 years. Started off as a cabin crew, moved to IT project management, to strategy, operational excellence. And post that, I then moved to setting up. For the longest time when I moved to the operational excellence department, I was really passionate about innovation. And I would toy with the idea of how, because beyond working for KQ, I still used to do a lot of work with entrepreneurs, and most of it was pro bono. Really, I was just passionate about helping startups and youths. So I volunteered in different forums where we could help these young entrepreneurs begin figuring out how to put structure to their businesses. So I remember once having a conversation with the then head of marketing and head of procurement at Kenya Airways and telling them how can we be able to open up the aviation space to local entrepreneurs who would otherwise not be able to get an opportunity to be a supplier because of all the rigorous requirements. And then I also realized that Kenya was being a very legacy carrier or a legacy airline, meaning it's been there for a while and all that. There was a lot of bureaucracy, but entrepreneurs had a lot of solutions that would add value to the airline. And so after a while, I started toying with the idea of, well, what if we set up an innovation hub that would help bridge this gap? It would help inculcate a culture of innovation internally so that then the internal staff could be able to start figuring out how to craft and create solutions that would solve some of the challenges, but also get entrepreneurs that could partner with the airline and generally the aviation space to be able to find solutions to problems. And so, well, it was a long journey. We started with a virtual innovation hub that was only centering on stuff during COVID.
Not easy to launch an innovation hub during COVID.
It wasn't easy, but I looked at it and was like, you know what, this is an opportunity because everyone is at home and the airlines, all travel is shut down. So it wouldn't harm. So I reached out to and the CEO then had just reported. He had just worked for like 3 months and then COVID hit. And so I reached out to him on LinkedIn. I was like, hey, my name is Martin. I work for Kenya Airways. All these are my skill sets. I'm willing to help. And this is my proposal of how we can help. He says, oh, thank you very much. I'll reach out to you. Let me think about it. And so, cut the long story short, we put together a team and started a virtual innovation hub where we would run business hackathons so that we give people 5 days to identify problems around identify ideas around some of the objective pillars of a business, come up with concepts of how to solve those problems, and then implement them. So that was how it started. It eventually moved to become an actual innovation hub, and we now started working with entrepreneurs in the ecosystem, not only in Kenya but probably across Africa, to be able to. So we ran a lot of virtual boot camps, and then we selected the best, and we took them through an incubator for a while, for like 3 months, and then they had an opportunity to pitch, and then the best guys who won had an opportunity to then implement the solutions within Kenya Airways. And that also really showed me more and more that entrepreneurs are actually the guys who will make a difference. Whether you think about them creating groundbreaking solutions for already existing organizations or creating employment. And so I think the working with the entrepreneurial bug beat me, if I may call it that. I was beaten by that bug. And so when I got an opportunity to start consulting for Sinapis when Sinapis was designing the program that would target the businesses at growth stage, when an opportunity to move to work for Sinapis full time arose, I felt prayerfully that was it was time and it was the season for me to move and now work more directly with entrepreneurs and have more impact on them.
Yeah, and we're so glad that you did. So how many entrepreneurs do you think you've worked with personally over all these years? If you had to guess.
Give or take around 100, 150.
So 100, 150 in it with them in the business, talking about all the things you said earlier, late night calls, the emotional toll. Sometimes you're mad at them. What are maybe 2 or 3 of the most practical points of advice for entrepreneurs that might be listening to this that you would share with them that are keys to success?
So the first one is do not do it alone. Most entrepreneurs, generally being an entrepreneur is I normally say any entrepreneur who decides to start a business is a very courageous person because it's not an easy path to take. And especially the people who jump into entrepreneurship by choice. I had a lucrative job I was doing and I feel called out to run a business. And so it's not like I'm doing this to earn my keep only, but I'm in this for the long haul. I think don't do it alone. There's help out there for entrepreneurs. And sometimes if you're not aware of the opportunities available for you, then you can easily give up because it's a very tough journey. So the first one, don't do it alone. The second one is better days are ahead. It doesn't matter what you're going through today. It might be a really tough day. If you need to take a break and rest, do it, but do not quit. Better days are ahead. On the same breath, I'll also tell entrepreneurs that you need to know when to hang the boots because the entrepreneurs we've worked with and you realize that they are flogging a dead horse, literally. Their business model is not going to work. The market they are in or is not going to absorb whatever products they're having, or their products are just a flop, or the services are just not good enough. So instead of having a bias and trying to push the products on people's throat, you just need to know when it's time for you to either hang the boots. And when I talk of hanging the boots, I don't mean closing the business, but when it's time to pivot.
Okay.
Yeah, because you can always pivot and figure out what is required. And the last one is listen to your customers. That's a really critical part of entrepreneurship. Listen to your customers because your customers are the ones who buy your products or your service, consume your services, and they will tell you what it is that you need to either improve or what you need to add to your product or service. Yeah.
So it's obvious you love working with entrepreneurs. You've been bitten by the bug.
Yeah.
What's hard about your job?
So one of the hardest things about my job is sometimes it doesn't matter the processes that you put in place or the structures that you put in place to vet, to work with, and to be able to assess and evaluate and ensure that an entrepreneur is actually saying the truth. And sometimes you just don't get it because people are people. And so sometimes you pour yourself into an entrepreneur, you vouch for them with investors, with partners and all that. And then boom, you realize it's not what you really thought. So that has been a tough point on that side of entrepreneurs. On the other side is the pain of how investment sometimes is done in this landscape where you have to watch an entrepreneur who's built their business for years lose their business to a hostile takeover by a VC who wants to exit and wants to sell to the highest bidder. And the pain the entrepreneur goes through losing their life, because for an entrepreneur, that's their life. Like they've poured everything into that business.
Yeah.
That's a really hard one.
Do you have a story about that? Does one come to mind that you think? I mean, I don't want you to name names or do anything that would violate confidentiality, but I mean, hearing you say that, I can see the pain that you're feeling.
Yeah.
Help those who maybe haven't ever experienced that story up close and personal to feel it.
I think the one I'll give is of a founder I worked with. He's not in our network right now. He's not one of our alumni, but a founder we worked with for a while, and he built quite a good business. And he made, I'm even getting emotional. He made a bad choice of an investment partner. And because what this founder looked at was how much this investor was putting into the business, but he didn't look at the fine print. And we had the conversation back and forth with him that, before you put pen to paper, can you get a lawyer to look at the terms? Can you get all these things, figure out what's going on? Don't just look at how much this person is putting into the business. And so I think he didn't. So he got the money. After getting the money, he then brought this partner on board. And before he knows it, part of the terms of these people coming on board was that they would have a majority stake in his board and in his company as well. And the exit clause was also not very favorable to the founder. So to cut the long story short, these guys came and just started taking the business a direction the founder didn't want it to go.
How long had he been building the business?
For about 15 years.
Wow.
So they started taking the business a direction the founder didn't want the business to go. And when he pushed back, they voted him out of the board. So he had shares in the business, but they voted him out and they fired him. They said they want to hire a CEO. He can't be part of the board, but his voice doesn't matter. And so the guy was thrown out of the board and thrown out of a company he had built for very many years. And he had to sit and painfully watch the guys, after 2 years, sell off the company to the highest bidder. And that was his life. He poured his life, sweat and blood into the business, and it was a really solid one.
In our work and in the communities that we travel in, there's a lot of talk of impact investment, faith-driven investment. I'm just curious, what do you think are some of the keys for that to be really healthy, to be healthy for the founder, healthy for the capital providers? What are some of your thoughts about investment?
I think my thoughts about investment, especially when you talk about impact investment and faith-driven investment and investors that come from the Western spaces, I think on the investor side, there's a very big need for investors to be able to take time to understand the dynamics of the markets that these founders are working in. They are very different from the markets in the US. You may, as an investor, invest in a very great business today, and then tomorrow there's a change in law on taxation, or there's a change in policy that affects this business owner, and all of a sudden, the business blows up in flames. And so there's a need for the investors to understand the dynamics of the market and also to truly come alongside the founders to offer more than capital, more than just the money, so that when you're putting your money in a business, you're not just putting money, but you're coming committed to walk the journey with this founder, to support their growth and development, to support the growth and development of their teams, and to come alongside them as a partner to help them build a business that will make a difference. On the side of the founders, there's also need for them to understand where the Western investors are coming from, because there's normally a gap and it causes a lot of chaos, so that the founders are able to understand what, for example, are the languages that these investors understand, what's the investment thesis of the investors you're trying to get to talk to, and then also to be patient. Raising capital from a private equity fund is not similar to going to a bank with collateral and taking a loan. I mean, you might make 72 or 75 pitches and close one deal out of that, or none. So the founders should also understand that raising capital from private equity funds takes time. So they need to just build the resilience and work towards building relationships that will allow these investors to understand their businesses and walk the journey with them.
So, Martin, you've been right at the heart of transitions within Sinapis, where now we are integrating capital into the Ascent accelerator. I'd love for you to explain, why is that important? What do you think that's going to mean for founders? Where are we headed with that?
Oh wow, that for us that's an answered prayer, and I believe for our founders as well, because when we've run the accelerator for 4 years now, close to 4 years now. And one of the biggest things that our founders kept telling us time and time again is that the lack of capital integration into the program. They love the program and they say they've never been to any other program that was as transformative as the accelerator program that they went through with Sinapis, which is called Ascent. They love how we bring them together with their leadership teams. They're able to cascade their visions and their dreams and validate their business models and plan their growth. Like, it's super practical because it's not a training. It's more of a strategy session for their businesses on steroids. So they pull out of their businesses and they're able to work on, because founders most of the time spend the time working in the business and not on the business. And so Ascent gives them an opportunity to work on the business and define where they're going to in the long run and the practical steps to get there. But they said the biggest gap for them was capital integration. We've had very supportive partners that have actually invested into most of our founders, or into the founders, and that has been very helpful. So I think us integrating capital into Ascent will be a game changer, because now we can, number one, also test our statement that when you come into Ascent, by the time you're done with us in a year, you're investment ready. So it's time for us to test our own medicine, have a taste of our own medicine, and see, okay, fine. If we take a founder through Ascent and we can't invest in them, then what are we saying? Number one. And then number two, it also enables us to not wait until the end of a program to invest in a founder. So if we onboard a founder and in 3 months they're ready to receive capital, then we have the liberty of being able to inject capital into their businesses, because we shall have done the due diligence process, the investor readiness assessment at the onset when we recruit these founders. And so we can confidently say that, well, this founder is ready to receive capital. The last thing I'm going to say is, once a founder has received the initial capital, it makes capital more accessible to them, because other investors are able to then match whatever capital they already received. So it opens many other doors for the founder to be able to raise more capital from other investors. And it also gives us the ability to tell investors, look, we've invested in these founders. Yeah. We can vouch for them. They need more capital. Can you pour capital into these businesses?
Yeah, and I think probably most people listening to this have a sense of why founders would want capital. Obviously, investors are looking to place capital. But you're a Kenyan.
Yeah.
You're a leader.
Yeah.
You're pouring your life into this. Can you talk about, why does this all matter?
This matters because to many. So number one, like for example, in Kenya, the informal sector, what you call informal sector, employs give or take around 75% of the actual people who are employed, or even more. A lot of youths are coming out of colleges, graduating out of colleges, and I think right now, from the latest statistics, about almost 67% unemployment rate. And that story is not just in Kenya; it's in other African countries as well.
So a kid gets out of school, worked hard, got good grades, get the diploma, and 2/3 of them
can't find a job. So they are at home doing nothing, trying to get employment. And so the entrepreneurs really bridge that gap. If you have solid founders building solid businesses, I mean, one of our businesses joined the program, and by the time they were done with the program, they doubled the number of people they'd employed because of the things they were able to unlock. That is something huge. We have one of our founders who's out in the agribusiness space who employs over 400 people, and they're looking to probably even double that. And they have literally changed the economical topography of an entire area.
And you saw that with your grandfather. I mean, that
Yes,
connects
exactly.
back to your own story.
Connects back to that, yeah. So it's really a powerful tool in the hands of entrepreneurs to help people find meaningful or gainful employment that will dignify them. Because if somebody doesn't have a job and they have to keep asking for handouts, nothing dehumanizes somebody more than that. But if entrepreneurs are able to create meaningful, dignifying jobs, then all of a sudden you have, not all of a sudden, but like you have guys who are able to live their purpose, and they're able to sort their families, and they're able to, and the ripple effect of that is it also impacts the GDP of the economy. Because then now you have guys who are able to pour out money into the economy, and it raises the GDP of the economy as well.
That's awesome. So maybe the last thing I want to ask is, and it's a big question. What's your dream for Kenya?
Oh man, I have a dream moment. But my dream for Kenya is to see a nation where the young people are able to be gainfully engaged. Because these guys have a lot of hopes and a lot of dreams, and it's heartbreaking to see the number of young people who get into hopelessness and despair. And when you have a lot of young people getting into hopelessness and despair, the crime rate will shoot up, because this person needs to eat, they need to survive and exist. So people will get into crime and other shoddy stuff, not because they want to, but because they have to survive. So I dream of a Kenya where every young person can be able to get meaningfully engaged in work that can help them fulfill the purpose. Because I believe everybody has a purpose that they've been created for, so that they can be able to fulfill their purpose. I dream of a Kenya where doing business will be easy, where we'll have stable tax regimes that don't keep on changing based on whoever becomes the next leader or the next president. And that can provide some sort of stability for entrepreneurs who are doing a lot of the work, so that being an entrepreneur does not feel like punishment. It doesn't feel like you are working so hard to create jobs, but you're being punished for it. And then finally, I dream of Kenya where capital will be accessible, and where, let me rephrase that, where access to capital will be democratized, so that it's not such a painful thing for a founder who's genuine and authentic to access capital. And the most interesting thing is, if you've worked in the ecosystem for a while, the people I normally call fundpreneurs, they're always raising from seed round to Series Z, if there's a Series Z. And the most interesting thing is these guys are loved by many entrepreneurs. That this guy is a scam, and this guy is not building no business. He's just raising capital, says he's building a business. After 2-3 years, the thing blows up in flames, and he's learned his lessons, and he builds another one, and he raises capital. So sometimes it's heartbreaking to see that, and to see founders who are building solid but not sexy businesses, or businesses that don't look glamorous. And these are the guys who are having a lot of impact, not being able to raise the capital that they need to scale.
Yeah. I mean, thinking about this conversation, it feels like it all goes back to what you talked about with your grandfather. This clear vision of hundreds of lives, maybe thousands, being impacted with his entrepreneurial activities, heart for his community, heart for employees. And that's what you're pouring your life into.
Yeah, exactly.
And it really is a vision of flourishing.
Yeah, that's true.
It's a desire for people to have their dignity affirmed. And it's what we all want, right?
Yeah, that's true. That's
I
true.
want to use my gifts. I want to provide for my family.
Yeah.
I want to grow.
Yeah.
I want to learn.
Yeah,
I
that's
want to
true.
be a leader.
Yeah.
Thank you so much for joining us. This has been an incredible conversation. And thanks for all of you for joining Scaling What Matters.